Well, good afternoon, brothers and sisters. My beloved, welcome to Readings with Regina. And I'd like to give a big shout out to all of my subscribers. You know, I am crazy about you, and I pray for you every night and every day. Well, this is going to be a special program. I'm not going to read my previous books. For one, this is the week of Thanksgiving, and I thought I would create a special program around that holiday and how it came to be. But first, I want to start off with some sad news, but we can rejoice, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. The great Imam, let me show you his book. Jamil Alameen, formerly H. Rap Brown, has made his transition. He left this earth physically, his body physically, November the 23rd, 2025. And let me just say this about this fabulous brother. H. Rap Brown is one of the reasons that Regina Jennings is, and I mean that, he is an icon, a symbol of the 1960s forever and ever and ever. And notice his name, H. Rap Brown. All right, rap wasn't even around as we know it as a musical genre when he was on this earth as a young man. That's how bad he was. And he stood up against white racist tyranny in a way that glued me, a struggling, just beaten down teenager at the time. So H-Rap means and has meant a lot to me. The last time I actually saw him was at Huey Newton's homegoing celebration, and he was an imam, Jamil Alameen, and I remember only bits and pieces of our conversation, but it was wonderful because from H-Rap to Imam Jamil Alameen was quite a transformation, and it was one that even made him more whole into who he is at that time and now was. So I wanted to share that with you first. And I also want to remind you that this good sister made her transition as well in 2025, just a month or two ago, September 25th, 2025. Asada Shakur made her ascension into the next realm that we're all going to go to. And I can just imagine the conversations that the good imam is having with Asada. Maybe not just yet, because I think the body has to go through, not the body, the soul has to go through some kind of levels of, I guess I'll say reality. I've studied ancient Kemetic transitional periods. So I'm not really quite sure about what I'm saying, but we know he has left the earth physically. We know Asada is gone, and that's a for sure. All right. And I absolutely believe that spirits do hook up. So we got some powerful ancestors that we could use in the coming months. But I think right now they both are to just light a candle for them, light a candle for them, and wish them the very best in their next realm, the realm that all of us are going to go to. Now, because of this particular time period, I wanted to start off with a poem written by one of my good Panther sisters. She's in Paris, and it's called For the Baby Ancestors in Gaza. Because you see, I'm going to get into the Native American genocide in just a minute. But I also want you to recognize that we are living through a genocide right now. A genocide that's making baby ancestors. Every time I read the title For the Baby Ancestors in Gaza, it throws me. Now, it's one thing, like I just mentioned, that the Imam, Jamil Alameen, is gone, right? He was a grown man. He lived his whole life for Black people. Asada Shakur is gone. She lived her life for Black people. Well, what about a baby? What about babies who are killed unmercifully? Yes, this is the time period in which we are living right now. And I want all of my listeners to understand that. I know it's difficult, but you must factor it into your life because you have a life right now. Why are you on earth? Always think of that. All right, here's Julia's poem for the baby ancestors in Gaza, November the 15th, 2023. In the corner of my house that receives the most sunbeams, I have built a secular altar on my humble wooden floor. Candles are lit for the tiny children who become ancestors each day in Gaza, and I create a garden of peace for them with my favorite plants to keep their spirits company. Healing aloe vera, tall and wise papyrus, resistant bamboo, sun absorbent succulents, the vigilance of snake plants, delicious edible portulaca, as well as a young acacia rescued from the climate war. I whisper bedtime stories to those baby ancestors. I share with them our hope push ups. I tell them how I take this daily darkness with a grain of light. And at night, I let them know my secret. I lie in bed, counting not the sheep I would not wish to die like anyway, but streets and streets of people's victories to be thanked. That's Sister Julia Wright. She's the daughter of Richard Wright. I'll get into her bio another time, okay? Her full bio so you could really know who she is. Here we go. Ah, estudiante. Much love. Yes, yes. May they rise in power. Yes, yes, yes. We'll be talking more about that as the show goes on. Okay, now I want to read to you. Let me get to that book. Oh, I don't think I showed you his book, Revolution by the Book. Now, his other book, his previous book, when he was H. Rap Brown, is called Die Nigga Die. And you can actually read that book. Let me see, I wrote it down. Right. At the website, History is a Weapon. You can read it for free. And I encourage you to do that. All right. Now I want to actually get to the subject at hand, which is Thanksgiving, which is a holiday, and it's such a nice holiday. Oh, we get together with our family. Yes, we eat good food, a lot of camaraderie. But let me say this again. Dig. If you in America, you are living on stolen, genocided land. All right. Now, Thanksgiving is supposed to be this interaction between the Englanders who came here to escape religious persecution in England. Yo, yes, but they killed as many Native Americans as they could. Yes, they did. So I want to start off with this book because I thought I want you to know about the Europeans that came here. I want you to get a taste of what Europe was like in the 15th, 16th centuries. Why Columbus and others later would come here. I want you to know about Europe. All right, here we go. The Spain that Christopher Columbus and his crews left behind just before dawn on August the 3rd, 1492, as they sailed forth from Palos and out into the Atlantic, was for most of its people a land of violence, squalor, treachery, and intolerance. In this respect, Spain was no different from the rest of Europe. Epidemic, outbreaks of plague and smallpox, along with routine attacks of measles, influenza, diphtheria, typhus, typhoid fever, and more, frequently swept European cities and towns clean of 10 to 20% of their populations at a single stroke. As late as the mid 17th century, more than 80,000 Londoners, one out of every six residents in the city, died from plague in a matter of months, and again, as with its companion diseases, the pestilence they called the Black Death returned. Like most of the other urban centers in Europe, says one historian who has specialized in the subject, quote, every 25 or 30 years, sometimes more frequently, the city was convulsed by a great epidemic, end of quote. Indeed, for centuries, an individual's life chances in Europe's pest house cities were so poor that the natural populations of the towns were in perpetual decline. That was offset by the in migration, that is, people coming from the countryside to the cities. In migration, one historian that put it this way, quote, vital if the cities were to be preserved from extinction. Famine, too, was common. What J.H. Eliot had said of 16th century Spain had held true throughout the continent for generations, beyond memory. Quote, listen to this very carefully. The rich ate and ate to excess, watched by 1,000 hungry eyes as they consumed their gargantuan meals. The rest of the population starved, end of quote. This was in normal times. The slightest fluctuation in food prices could cause the sudden deaths of additional tens of thousands who lived on the margins of perpetual hunger. So precarious was the existence of these multitudes in France that as late as the 17th century, each average increase in the price of wheat or millet directly killed a proportion of the French population equal to nearly twice the percentage of Americans who died in the Civil War. Check this. Roadside ditches filled with stagnant water served as public latrines in the cities of the 15th century, and they would continue to do so for centuries to follow. So too would other noxious habits and public health hazards of the time persist on into the future, from the practice of leaving the decomposing offal of butchered animals to fester in the streets to London's special problem, as historian Lawrence Stone puts it, of, quote, poor holes. There were large, deep, open pits in which were laid the bodies of the poor, side by side, row by row. Only when the pit was filled with bodies was it finally covered over with earth. As one contemporary quoted by Stone delicately observed, quote, how noisome the stench is that arises from these holes, so stowed with dead bodies, especially in sultry seasons and after rain, end of quote. Along with the stench and repulsive appearance of the openly displayed dead human and animal like, a modern visitor to a European city in this era would be repelled by the appearance and the vile aromas given off by the living as well. Most people never bathed, not once in an entire lifetime. Almost everyone had his or her brush with smallpox and other deforming diseases that left survivors partially blinded, pockmarked, or crippled, while it was the norm for men and women to have bad breath from the rotting teeth and constant stomach disorders, which can be documented from many sources, while suppurating ulcers, eczema, scabs, running sores, and other nauseating skin diseases were extremely common and often lasted for years. Street crime in most cities lurked around every corner. One especially popular technique for robbing someone was to drop a heavy rock or chunk of masonry on his head from an upper story window and then to rifle the body for jewelry and money. Okay, those are the Europeans, that came into the Americas, yes, and encountered, oops, gotta get this other book, The Native American. Now, let me tell you, same book, let me show you it again. What Benjamin Franklin has to say in this same book. Let me get to page 103. Here we go. This blew my mind. Admiration, now this is Ben Franklin. Admiration of Indian ways of living, particularly their peacefulness, generosity, trustworthiness, and egalitarianism, all of which were conspicuously absent from English, what I just read to you, European social relations of the time, led to some eloquent early praise of Virginia's native people, albeit from a distinct minority of British observers. But if those who spoke with their pens are sometimes regarded skeptically, those who voted with their feet cannot be. And it is especially telling that throughout the 17th and on to the 18th and 19th centuries, while almost no Indians voluntarily lived among the colonists, the number of whites who ran off to live with the Indians was a problem. You hear that, people? Often remarked upon. After a century and a half of permanent British settlement in North America, Benjamin Franklin joined numerous other commentators in lamenting that, now here's old Ben, this is a quote, when an Indian, I know y'all know Ben Franklin. Now, if any of y'all don't know Ben Franklin, look him up. When an Indian child has been brought up among us, taught our language, and habituated to our customs, yet if he goes to see his relations and make one Indian ramble with them, there is no persuading him ever to return. But when white persons of either sex have been taken prisoner young by the Indians and lived a while among them, though ransomed by their friends and treated with all imaginable tenderness to prevail with them to stay among the English, yet in a short time they become disgusted with our manner of life and the care and pains that are necessary to support it, and take the first good opportunity of escaping again into the woods from whence there is no reclaiming them. Did you hear that, people? Let me say this. Okay, what did I? Children brought up among the Indians were not the only problem. Adult men and women also turned their backs on Western culture, leading J. Hector St. John de Crevecoeur to exclaim, quote, thousands of Europeans are Indians. And we have no examples of even one of these Aborigines having from choice become Europeans. After surveying and analyzing this literature and the narratives of those Europeans who wrote about their experiences with the Indians, James Axtell has concluded that the whites who chose to remain among the natives stayed because they found Indian life to possess a strong sense of community, abundant love, and uncommon integrity. Values that the European colonists also honored, if less successfully. But Indian life was attractive for other values, for social equality, mobility, adventure, and as two adult converts acknowledged, quote, the most perfect freedom, the ease of living, and the absence of those cares and corroding solicitudes which so often prevail with us. Now, these were regular English British people, but the militarists, they hated the Indians. Yo, yes, they did. And all they wanted to do was to kill them and take their land. Let me pause here and see what I got. Okay, where we at? Let me show this. Ah, shalom. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Uptight 24. Appreciate you being here. Here we go. So when I first read these kind of things, it shocked me. Okay? The whites that wanted to be Indian, that just blows my mind. But the militarists, and this is very important that I say that. It's very important that I say that. And I'm going to step into the present for a moment. Again, look at Gaza. Again, look at Venezuela being threatened by the United States. War, war, war. Why? Over land. Okay? Over land. Now I'm going to read to you another very good book that I recommend. Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. We're going to get right into Thanksgiving right now with this book, okay? It covers what happened on supposed Thanksgiving, okay? That's Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by D. Brown. And the previous book was Columbus and the Conquest of the New World, American Holocaust by David Stannard. All right. We're going to go to D. Brown now. And I'm going to start with this quote from this book. I think it's very appropriate. This is what I'm trying to get the book off. Okay. This is what some Native Americans said. To the Indians, it seemed that Europeans hated everything in nature, the living forests, and their birds, and their beasts, and their grassy glades. The Europeans hated the water, the soil, and air itself. Now, good grief. Isn't that something for you to think about? Air itself? All right. Now, this was supposedly the first Thanksgiving. It took place in Plymouth, Massachusetts, what is now Massachusetts, in 1620. Okay. No, I'm wrong about that. 1625. I'm going to tell you what was going on in 1620 first. After the Englishmen landed at Plymouth in 1620, most of them probably would have starved to death but for the aid received from friendly natives of the New World. A Pemaquid named Samoset and 3 Wampanoags, that's the name of their ethnic group, named Massasoit, Squanto, and Hobama became self-appointed missionaries to the Pilgrims. All spoke some English, learned from explorers who had touched the shore in previous years. Squanto had been kidnapped by an English seaman who sold him into slavery in Spain, but he escaped through the aid of another Englishman. You see what's going on here? Okay? You got raiders, you got explorers, and you also have abolitionists. I'm talking about all the whites. All right? They were groups of whites who believed in different things. All right? Boom. But slavery was in the Americas. Slavery was in Spain. Slavery was in Europe. Yo, yes. And Indians were made into slaves as well before they dragged the Africans over here. All right. Where am I? Here we go. All spoke English. Okay. Englishmen and finally managed to return home. He and the other Indians regarded the Plymouth colonists as helpless children. Do you hear this? They shared corn with them from the tribal stores, showed them where and how to catch fish, and got them through the first winter. When spring came, they gave the white men some seed corn and showed them how to plant and cultivate it. For several years, these Englishmen and their Indian neighbors lived in peace, but many more shiploads of white people continued coming ashore. The ring of axes and the crash of falling trees echoed up and down the coast of the land which the white men now called New England. Settlements began crowding in upon each other. In 1625, some of the colonists called Samoset to give them 12,000 additional acres of Pemaquid land. Samoset knew that land came from the Great Spirit, was as endless as the sky, and belonged to no man. So to humor these strangers in their strange ways, however, he went through a ceremony of transferring the land and made his mark on a paper for them. It was the first deed of Indian land to English colonists. So, what history has called Thanksgiving, you dig? When the colonists and the Indians got together and there was a little ceremony and food and all that, yo, that was a land exchange, a land purchase. That was actually the first so called Thanksgiving. Worse than that, 10 years later, them same jive pilgrims celebrated the genocide of the Wampanoags. But I digress. Let me get back to the book. Most of the other settlers, coming by thousands now, did not bother to go through such a ceremony. By the time Massasoit, great chief of the Wampanoags, died in 1662, his people were being pushed back into the wilderness. His son, Metacom, foresaw doom for all Indians unless they united to resist the invaders. Although the New Englanders flattered Metacom by crowning him King Philip of Pokanoket, he devoted most of his time to forming alliances with the Narragansetts and other tribes in the region. In 1675, after a series of arrogant actions by the colonists, King Philip led his Indian Confederacy into a war meant to save the tribes from extinction, genocide, extinction, genocide. The Indians attacked 52 settlements, completely destroying 12 of them. But after months of fighting, the firepower of the colonists virtually exterminated the Wampanoags and Narragansetts. King Philip was killed and his head publicly exhibited at Plymouth for 20 years. Along with other captured Indian women and children, his wife and young son were sold into slavery in the West Indies. When the Dutch came to Manhattan Island, Peter Minuit purchased it for 60 guilders in fishhooks and glass beads, but encouraged the Indians to remain and continue exchanging their valuable peltries for such trinkets. These are pelts of animals, animal skins, especially beavers. In 1641, Willem Kieft levied tribute upon the Mohawks and sent soldiers to Staten Island to punish the Raritans, these are all Native American ethnic groups, for offenses which had been committed not by the natives but by the whites. The Raritans resisted arrest and the soldiers killed 4 of them. When the Indians retaliated by killing 4 Dutchmen, Kiev ordered the massacre of 2 entire villages. Now you see this? You see this? 2 entire villages while the inhabitants slept. The Dutch soldiers ran their bayonets through men, women, and children, hacked their bodies to pieces, and then leveled the villages with fire. Let me just say this before I stop today. Native Americans indeed had skirmishes between one another, the various ethnic groups. Boom! Choctaws, Chickasaws, Oglalas, they had their skirmishes. But the indigenous people in the Americas had never seen or experienced the kind of demonic warfare that the Europeans brought here. You didn't kill women. You didn't kill children. You didn't kill babies. You didn't scorch the earth with fire so that you could starve the people. Boom. In Gaza today, babies, children are starving. Okay? They are starving to death. Yes, they are. That's the kind of warfare. I'm trying to bring this up. That's the kind of warfare. Yes, okay. That's the kind of warfare that blew the minds out of the red nations. You dig? And let me tell you what it also did. It made the white settlers oblivious to suffering. Okay, just like, okay, we celebrating this Thursday with our loved ones. We're going to be happy to see our loved ones, right? Eat that turkey, okay, or vegan turkey, whatever, Raksha, boot. The point is this. That's why I call this a mental genocide. You dig? Because the American population, the American public, has become desensitized to what this holiday really stands for. This is what I want you to do, people. Look, I'm not a sadist. I don't want you to be upset and all the time. Boom. But you got to recognize the genocide that took place, that we are celebrating on this Thanksgiving Day. There's even going to be a parade and all that. All cities do this. People, good people, I want us to create a better world. I want us to free political prisoners. Brother Imam Jamil, he was in his 80s. What in the hell was he doing in jail? And the charges were bogus. This country followed him forever because he was a symbol of black power. Understand that. He should not have been in jail. He should not have died in jail. And somebody else confessed to the murder that he went to jail for. Oh, they did that years ago. Yes. But this country kept my brother, your brother, in jail. He died in jail. So, this Thursday, when you with your loved ones, light a candle for the indigenous people who lost their lives and their land. Do not forget them. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Pray hard. Be involved with what is wrong with the earth. Work to change it in whatever way that you can. Know that you are dearly, dearly, dearly loved, and that I pray for you every night and every day. I won't be with you this Thursday, but I will be back next Tuesday. Until then, take really good care of yourself, your family, your friends, and the earth. Bye now.